not bless freedom of speech. But don't ever forget that just because you have a right to do something doesn't make what you say right. So we stand here today, an extraordinary community of those who support Israel at this time of crisis. We are Jews and non-Jews. We are Republicans and Democrats. We are hawks, moderates, and doves on Israeli policy. And we stand here down the road from the White House with grave concern and great pride, knowing, as Prime Minister Netanyahu and Ambassador Dermer have pointed out over and over again, in this crisis, America stands shoulder to shoulder with Israel. So we gather here, Am Echad, as one people, all of us, joined by certain truths, and one truth above all. Israel remains surrounded by forces which, if they believe they could militarily destroy Israel today, would not hesitate to do so, and only Israel's strength, enhanced by America's political, economic, diplomatic, military, and intelligence support, stands in the way of that happening. Iron Dome is just the most extraordinary and vivid manifestation of that support. But from Hezbollah to Hamas, from ISIS to circles of power in Iran, from Islamic Jihad to an array of Syrian forces, the existential dangers to Israel and its people, all its people, Israel Jews and Israel Christians, Israel Arabs, Muslims, and Jews, all they're real, those threats are dangerous, and they are imminent. And nothing exemplifies that more than the rockets that Hamas has rained on Israel for 13 years. 5,000 of them since Hamas took control in Gaza. The targeting of Hamas's rockets at civilian populations is a moral abomination and a crime against humanity. Each one was aimed at innocent men, women, and children. Each one intended to maim and murder. Hamas's goal is not a secret. It's Charter calls for the destruction of Israel. And it places its military equipment, its missile launchers, its command and control units in the middle of civilian centers. A target they know Israel will try to avoid. And while Hamas seeks to kill innocents, Israel takes unprecedented steps to avoid it. My friends, take this message out. Never before in history has a nation taken the steps that Israel has to avoid civilian casualties. With all of its warnings, it does so knowing that the effect will be to allow Hamas's military personnel to escape so that Israel doesn't kill their families. No nation on earth can be asked to sustain what Israel has sustained without acting militarily when necessary to defend its citizens. No attack on America, Britain, France, Russia, or Chinese cities would be responded any differently. Look, we see the civilian death and injury count mount, and Israel is determined to do even better. For we must never, never turn our backs on what it means when civilians die. It is painful, it rends the heart when any child is killed. God forbid we should ever forget that. Yet Israel is criticized by those who talk about disproportion. You heard the ambassador before about the absurdity of that. So finally, my friends, with so much of Israel now under the range of enemy rockets, we must never lose sight, even at this time of crisis, that there is not ultimately a military solution to prevent such attacks, and always a danger that military clashes can spin out of control. Israel is doing everything possible to avoid that. Everything should be tried to prevent the kind of escalation that would spin out of control. But Israel is determined that its military responses will be matched by its efforts to finally bring around a real peace, a peace in the form that will enhance Israel's security. But until that day, Until that day, may it come soon, we stand here to defend Israel's right to defend each and every one of its citizens. It is a right Israel will never abandon, and neither will we.